Police Minister Bheki Cele's support for stricter legislation on gun possession hasn't really been well received by some groups. While commenting on the success of the Firearms Amnesty program last week, Cele suggested he would propose amendments to the Firearms Control Act to prevent individuals from owning guns. AfriForum has criticised the minister's comments, citing high crime levels in the country. But on the other side of the story, Gun-Free South Africa has welcomed the statement. So let's have a conversation about this. And from our Pretoria Studios, we're joined by Ian Cameroon. He's head of safety at AfriForum. And here in Johannesburg, I've got Adèle Kirsten in our studios, who is the spokesperson for Gun-Free South Africa. So, Adèle, welcome. Great to have you here in studio with me. And of course, welcome to Ian. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks.
Ian, let me begin with you. Just in terms of the minister's statements, how did you interpret it? I'll ask you the same questions, but Ian, let me begin with you.
Well, I think it's quite simple. You know, the statement we made last week was that South Africa being dreamt about without firearms is like dreaming about KFC without chicken. You know, it's ridiculous to look at South Africa in this way, as the current state of affairs regarding firearms is a huge problem. Not because of firearms, because of crime levels that are so high. South African Police Service has admitted that it cannot fulfill its mandate to safeguard citizens or their property. And for that reason, we are very worried that now they're going to disarm legal firearm owners and they won't be able to defend themselves. We think it's terrible that organizations like Gun-Free SA want to blame firearms for killing people when it's people killing people.
Yeah. All right. So that, of course, is your perspective and where you're coming from. Adèle, let's get your response.
Okay, so to follow up on Ian, it's precisely because it's people that kill other people that you need to have strict gun control. It's human to get angry, to make mistakes, and when you have a gun in your hand, that alters the outcome. Guns are much more lethal than any other weapon. And if we look at our stats, our crime stats from last year, firearms are the leading cause of homicide. So we have 58 people murdered every single day in this country. 23 of those are with guns. We need to silence the guns. We need to interrupt the cycle of violence. And the best way to do that, and we've shown that in this country, we've seen it elsewhere in the world, you reduce availability of guns, you reduce gun deaths. But more importantly, or as importantly, so you have a kind of dramatic intervention. You see a dramatic reduction in gun deaths. But there are two other knock-on effects that are as important. It begins to alter our environment and our social relations. It means that if I'm in a tavern and I accidentally step on someone's foot, we can end up having fisticuffs, but I can't pull out my gun and shoot myself, the other person. Poppies won't happen. The Newtown shootings won't happen. Political killings won't happen. So I think we're at a crisis point. I think we need to silence the guns. That's part of the AU program for 2020. And I think now's the moment. And the minister's statement certainly signals that that's the direction he wants to go in, and that's why we support it.
So, you know, both of you, I think, are giving good arguments for both sides of the story. So let's talk, Ian. I'll bring this again to you. There's a lot of discussion around gun ownership, suicides, violence that leads to death in society. I mean, we talked to exactly what Adèle said, 58 murders a day, 23 are through gun murders. And that perhaps if by making gun ownership illegal, it'll bring this down, and that there have been case studies to show that this does happen. Would you not support that? Would you not try and allow that to happen, to try and bring this violence down?
Well, in our view, it's simple. You cannot blame guns for killing people. Then we need to start banning knives. We need to start banning people using their fists. We need to start banning cars because they apparently drive drunk. We need to start banning spoons because they make people fat. And so I can carry on with more examples. The point is, it's about the handler. It's about the person holding the gun, holding the knife, putting the fist to someone's face, and so on and so forth. The majority of murders in South Africa are social fabric crimes. That means that those people usually know the victim or the perpetrator in some or other way. And for that reason, it's very important to know that if someone wants to kill someone, they're going to kill them. It's obvious when you listen to people like Bheki Cele or you listen to Gun Free South Africa, they haven't spent much time on crime scenes, because when you go and speak to victims and you speak to the suspects that were arrested for those crimes, they will make it very clear that they wanted to hurt someone. And whether it's with a gun, with a knife, with a machete, it doesn't matter. Not one amnesty has ever decreased the murder rate in South Africa, and we can see that. The data that's being used by organizations like Gun Free SA is old data. A lot of it comes from 1999 or even 2000. And if you go look at murder statistics in South Africa for the past year, far more other tools were used to kill people than guns. Yes, you can argue that just over 40% of murders were committed by guns, but what about all the murders committed by machetes, by people throwing stones at each other, by setting each other alight, by stabbing each other, and so I can go on with different examples. We need to look into the social, or rather the moral fiber of people in South Africa, rather than banning the tools that those people that are morally not in line, that would then use to hurt others.
Yeah. So, I mean, Adele, if we sort of go with what Ian is saying here, that it's not only guns that cause death, and we know this. I mean, it doesn't take an expert to know something like that. But I mean, does this condone, or does this make it more acceptable that there are so many guns? And the reality is, and perhaps I'll get Ian's opinion on this as well, is that a lot of the guns are illegal. There are illegal circulations of guns happening in here. If we had to go entirely on the legal route, perhaps we wouldn't have these levels. But these illegal guns and other methods of being killed?
So maybe just the starting point is, I think that to say that for Gun Free South Africa, I think the majority of people, most of us in this country, want to live in a safe and peaceful society. So the question is, what's the best way to get there? So Ian is incorrect in saying that guns are not, they are the leading cause of murder in this country, 47%. Knives are also then second to that.
Ian is saying that you've got outdated data. This is not real.
That's 2019 stats from the Minister. So guns are the leading cause of that. That's a fact of murder in this country. So other weapons have to be dealt with. We're very clear that removing the weapon doesn't change other kinds of violence, but removing a gun from circulation and availability. We have shown that we reduced our gun deaths by 50% when we introduced stricter gun laws in 2000. So when Gun Free started, there were 34 gun deaths a day in 98. In 2009, and this was through mortuary data, after 10 years of the gun law, we came down to 18 gun deaths. That's a significant reduction. I would imagine there's no one in this country who wouldn't want to move in that direction. And what you began to see with your SABC data is that there was an almost 50% reduction in murder. So what you see is gun homicides track overall homicides. And that's a global phenomenon. It's been proven overwhelmingly. And so for us, it's a starting point, but it's a dramatic intervention and it has a dramatic impact.
Which countries, as a matter of interest, sorry to interrupt you, but which countries, as a matter of interest, have brought in this legislation and it has been successful, where the ownership of a gun is illegal? But there are guns are out of circulation.
Well, many countries don't prohibit civilian ownership for handguns. And I think that's Gun Free looks at the evidence. Where's the evidence? Handguns cause the most harm. So that's why our understanding, that's why the minister's going to say the majority of civilians have handguns for self-defense. There's no evidence to prove that they're an effective self-defense weapon, but they're the weapon that cause the most harm. So, for example, in 80% of attempted murders, this is last year's SAP stats, firearms are used. They're used overwhelming in home robberies and obviously in carjackings. In carjackings, 83% of carjackings, guns are used. So the evidence is that handguns are the issue. And that's where you need to intervene. So you need to be evidence-led about what are the guns causing the most harm. They're handguns. And then in terms of, and it has to be a comprehensive intervention. Gun violence is complex, so you need a multidimensional approach. You don't just strengthen the gun law, you have to mop up the pool of illegal guns. That's one of SABC's priority tasks. They have to take the guns out of circulation. But unlike other kind of commodities, guns are mostly legally manufactured. It's a legitimate trade between countries. And we see that 25 guns are lost and stolen every single day from civilians. So your legal pool feeds your illegal pool, which is why it's really important to control your legal stocks. Because once it's out of the legal chain, you can't control it. You can't measure it. You don't know where it's going.
So, Ian, let me bring you in here. There are reports of leaked versions of the draft amendment bill that would lead to people actually losing their right to own firearms for self-defense. And from what I've been hearing from you, this you would have a lot to say about this. You would oppose this? I mean, do you know anything more? Is there any perhaps truth to this rumor?
Definitely, there is truth. Cele has already said that he dreams of a South Africa without guns. But I want to go back to why the evidence that we hold disproves what Adèle has just said. First of all, if you spend time in rural areas, majority of murders aren't committed with guns. The leading factor or the leading reason for murders in South Africa are people committing those murders, not the tools that they use. Above that, less than 50% of murders in South Africa are committed with guns. So blaming guns alone would be irresponsible and not true. Then on top of that, there has been no decrease in murder in the past 8 years in South Africa, regardless of supposed gun control. The South African Police Service in the last 6 years have lost 9.5 million rounds of ammunition. And I suspect that those ammunition rounds are in the hands of criminals. They've lost almost 5,000 guns in the last 6 years. Why aren't we focusing on that instead of trying to infringe on the rights of legal gun owners? On top of that, there are about 3 million legal gun owners in South Africa, and we suspect just over 2.3 million illegal gun owners in South Africa. Why aren't we focusing on the 2.3 million illegal ones? Now we are disarming people. We are saying they need to take part in amnesty and they need to come and hand in guns. Tomorrow or the day after that, they get robbed and they've got nothing to defend themselves with because of people making statements that simply do not make any sense. So yes, Cele wants that, but I can guarantee you that the more than 3 million gun owners in South Africa will fight this. And if there is such a draft or any form of amendment bill that they want to introduce, we will give the strongest possible form of opposition to that we can.
All right, Ian, I've got to leave it there for now, but I mean, I think we've got a great understanding of your stance on all of this. And Adèle, the same for you. You, again, would oppose on the other side. You would be completely for any form of
strengthening the law, absolutely. And we look forward to the debate. And it needs to be a public conversation, and it will be that.
All right, we leave it there. Adèle Kirsten, spokesperson for Gun-Free South Africa. And in our Pretoria studio, we had Ian Cameroon, who's the head of safety at AfriForum, talking about gun ownership and the legislation thereof. Let's have a quick wrap, and Lloyd Harrow